As the security landscape continues to shift rapidly, our strategic foresight must ensure that the Philippines is always one step ahead.
China's pressure on the Philippines has moved from occasional flare-ups to a grinding, almost daily campaign of intimidation at sea. And it now feels like the entire region is watching the front line run right through Philippine waters. Filipino crews are being rammed by larger Chinese vessels, hit with high-powered water cannons strong enough to injure sailors and shatter equipment, targeted with military-grade lasers, and shadowed by swarms of Coast Guard and militia ships that deliberately crowd, block, and box them in near key features like Second Thomas Shoal and Scarborough Shoal. What used to be framed as incidents has hardened into a pattern, a deliberate strategy that many in Manila now sum up as China's ICAD approach: illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive.
The Philippines strongly affirms its respect for this milestone decision as an important contribution to ongoing efforts in addressing disputes in the South China Sea.
It's illegal because it brazenly ignores UNCLOS and the 2016 arbitral ruling. Coercive because every move is designed to make the Philippines back down. Aggressive because each new tactic goes a step further than the last. And deceptive because Beijing continues to label these actions as law enforcement or routine operations, even as the footage shows otherwise. But the story today is no longer just about what China is doing. It's about how the Philippines is changing in response.
You know, we are not here to bemoan whatever it is that China is doing, but really to again form that coalition. We are not against anyone. We are just for territory, the defense of our territory, the respect to the exercise of our sovereign rights.
Manila is no longer behaving like a passive victim, filing notes verbaliz, and hoping statements from abroad will be enough. Instead, it is quietly assembling a new defense ecosystem that stretches far beyond ships and guns, building coastal missile forces and air defenses, deepening alliances with the US, Japan, and other partners, mastering strategic transparency to win the information war, strengthening its legal and diplomatic offensives, and beginning to prepare its society psychologically for a prolonged contest at sea. The central shift is this: the Philippines is moving from reaction to resilience. Rather than treating each Chinese provocation as an isolated crisis, it is developing a long-term, multi-domain blueprint that blends deterrence, alliance architecture, information warfare, and national mobilization. A new strategic posture aimed not just at surviving China's pressure, but at shaping the balance of power around it. The security landscape confronting the Philippines today no longer resembles the world its old defense playbooks were written for. China has perfected a brand of hybrid warfare at sea that operates below the threshold of open conflict but inflicts strategic damage all the same, using its Coast Guard and maritime militia as frontline instruments instead of warships flying naval flags. At Scarborough Shoal, collisions and blocking maneuvers have become routine. At Second Thomas Shoal, laser attacks and high-pressure water cannons have been used not as warnings, but as tools of intimidation designed to injure crew members and cripple equipment. At the same time, Beijing deploys a parallel information campaign, from disinformation about fake rescues to narratives framing its actions as law enforcement, intended to confuse international audiences and erode Manila's credibility. This is why the Philippines has discovered that law and public perception have become as crucial as ships and aircraft.
With regard to the impact of China's island building and other activities on the marine environment, the tribunal retained its own independent experts to assess the harm caused by these activities. They found that the harm caused by China to the marine environment was devastating and irreparable.
The 2016 Hague ruling remains the country's most powerful legal anchor, but it only matters when the world sees the truth of what happens at sea. In this era, video evidence, transparency briefings, and narrative control are strategic weapons in their own right. And overarching all of this is the realization that modern conflict isn't confined to waves and warplanes. It spans cyber intrusions, diplomatic pressure campaigns, economic leverage, and psychological operations meant to exhaust public resolve. The old model of defending territory with patrols and diplomatic protests simply cannot cope with the speed, scale, and multidimensional nature of China's coercive strategy. The Philippines is now operating in a battlefield where reality must be proven, perception must be defended, and national security is measured across military, informational, digital, and societal fronts all at once. The Philippines is undergoing one of its most important military transformations in decades. A shift away from scattered, reactive patrols toward a hardened coastal defense architecture designed to withstand and deter sustained Chinese pressure. This begins with the outposts themselves. Islands like Pagasa, Lawak, and Likas, once little more than remote detachments with radio towers, are being upgraded with modern radar systems, longer runways, hardened shelters, and reinforced command posts, while new monitoring stations in batons push surveillance right up to the Luzon Strait. These facilities are no longer isolated dots on a map. They're becoming nodes in a wider surveillance web tied into Allied satellite feeds, Japanese maritime radars, American ISR networks, and Australian patrol routines. On the water, the Philippines is abandoning the old model of sending a few large ships to show the flag and hoping they can outrun or outmaneuver harassment. Instead, it is moving to a distributed maritime patrol concept built around smaller, more agile vessels supported by drones, maritime patrol aircraft, and real-time intelligence from partners like Japan, Australia, the United States, Canada, and France. In practice, this means Philippine vessels now sail with eyes far beyond the horizon and with backup that extends across oceans. But the biggest doctrinal shift lies in the embrace of anti-access, area denial, a strategy long practiced by Taiwan, Vietnam, and other small states facing stronger adversaries. Manila is now investing in mobile missile batteries, long-range sensors, and sea denial systems that raise the cost of any hostile operation approaching Philippine waters. The idea is no longer to simply be present, but to make presence meaningful, to ensure that any attempt to coerce, blockade, or encroach on Philippine territory confronts a layered defense that can see, track, and if necessary, strike approaching threats. This is not the Philippines of a decade ago. This is a country methodically building a coastal shield, resilient, networked, and increasingly capable of shaping its maritime space rather than merely reacting to violations within it.
The Philippines isn't just working with partners anymore, it is embedding itself into an emerging collective shield that now defines the Indo-Pacific's security architecture. What once looked like a loose set of bilateral ties has matured into trilateral and quadrilateral defense webs, with the Philippines, the United States, Japan, and Australia conducting joint patrols, coordinated exercises, and integrated surveillance for the first time in modern history. These relationships are no longer symbolic, they are operational. The Japan-Philippines-US axis now provides maritime and aerial coverage across the Luzon Strait and the West Philippine Sea, while a parallel Philippines-Australia-US channel supports training, basing, and joint responses across the archipelago. When all four, Japan, the US, Australia, and the Philippines, align in a single patrol or exercise, the message is unmistakable. Any aggression will be observed, recorded, and responded to by a coalition rather than by a single state.
This shift is reinforced by new defense access agreements that fundamentally change Manila's strategic position.
I wish to acknowledge the arrival of the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of the Philippines, Her Excellency Maria Theresa.
Japan's Reciprocal Access Agreement, Tokyo's first in all of Southeast Asia, allows Japanese forces to train and operate on Philippine soil, a milestone that signals a historic shift in Japan's post-war defense role.
Of the Philippines, colleagues and friends, it's an honor to join you here in Manila to mark the signing of the Status of Visiting Forces Agreement between Canada and the Philippines.
Canada has signed a military cooperation pact that opens its training pipelines and logistics programs to Philippine forces, while the European Union is integrating the Philippines into broader maritime awareness platforms that help track illegal vessels and coercive maneuvers across the South China Sea. Together, these agreements elevate the Philippines from a regional outlier to a central node in the Indo-Pacific security network. And this matters profoundly because alliance embedding creates a deterrence multiplier. China, once able to pressure Manila without consequence, must now calculate the risks of confronting not just a single country, but a coalition of democracies with overlapping treaties, interoperable assets, and the eyes of global media fixed on every incident. Escalation becomes harder, coercion becomes riskier, and even routine aggression begins to draw international scrutiny. In this new environment, the Philippines is no longer isolated at sea. It stands inside a protective mesh of allies whose presence, coordination, and shared commitments make Beijing think twice before tightening the pressure. This is the collective shield concept, an ecosystem of alliances that transforms Manila's strategic vulnerabilities into a broader, shared deterrent. One of the most revolutionary changes in the Philippines' defense posture is its decision to turn truth itself into a strategic weapon, a public truth campaign that goes far beyond simple transparency and now functions as a form of deterrence. For years, China relied on ambiguity, secrecy, and controlled narratives to mask its coercive behavior. But the moment the Philippine Coast Guard began releasing raw, unfiltered footage of water cannon blasts, laser attacks, and ramming attempts, the information battlefield changed instantly. These videos, crisp, painful, undeniable, went viral across the world, forcing journalists, diplomats, lawmakers, and militaries to confront what was happening in Philippine waters. Every clip became a piece of evidence, every encounter a diplomatic dossier, every confrontation a global conversation. And as each video spread, China's disinformation narratives began to crack, because it is difficult to claim professional conduct when the whole world is watching sailors cling to the deck as a jet of water shreds their equipment. But the campaign doesn't stop at documentation. Manila is now fighting narrative warfare against a far broader challenge. Beijing's United Front operations that aim to influence public opinion, infiltrate local institutions, distort media narratives, and divide political discourse. The Philippines is countering this with stronger cybersecurity units, digital literacy programs, and a coordinated messaging effort that equips the public and the government to resist manipulation.
Hi, sir.
At the international level, Manila has learned to play on bigger stages. It now brings its evidence-backed cases to the UN, ASEAN, APEC, and every available diplomatic forum, ensuring that global allies hear one consistent message grounded in reality, not propaganda. What used to be a country quietly filing diplomatic notes is now a nation leveraging truth as a strategic tool, a weapon that exposes, delegitimizes, and constrains Beijing's coercion. And in a contest where perception shapes policy, Manila has discovered that a well-timed video, a verified map, or a transparent briefing can sometimes carry more deterrent weight than a patrol ship alone.
Perhaps the most underestimated, yet most transformative change in the Philippines' evolving defense posture is its embrace of a whole-nation resilience model. Not the shallow slogan often repeated in briefings,
but a true strategic concept that recognizes national security is no longer just a military responsibility. It begins in the coastal barangays, where fishermen, long treated as bystanders in the maritime struggle, are now being integrated into early warning networks through GPS tracking programs, community briefings, and direct links to Coast Guard stations. These communities, once isolated and vulnerable, are slowly becoming the frontline sensors of a sovereign nation. At the same time, Manila has started closing the loopholes that once left critical infrastructure exposed to foreign influence. Attempts by suspicious entities to infiltrate telecom networks, buy into major ports, or gain leverage over power grids and logistics hubs are now being scrutinized with an intensity unimaginable a decade ago. The government has begun building internal immunity, treating economic security, digital sovereignty, and infrastructure control as essential pillars of national defense. This resilience extends into the legal and diplomatic fronts as well. New laws are emerging to protect critical infrastructure from covert acquisitions, prevent data exfiltration, and guard against foreign political interference. Diplomatically, Manila is coordinating exposure campaigns that reveal underground CCP influence operations, while aligning more closely with democratic partners on sanctions, intelligence sharing, and transparent reporting. For the first time, the Philippines is constructing a layered shield that spans its coastline, its economy, its information space, and its civic landscape, a recognition that resilience is not built on soldiers alone, but on citizens, institutions, and the quiet, everyday fortifications of a country refusing to be bent by pressure. This is not merely a shift in tactics, it is the emergence of a new national mindset. Security is everyone's business, and sovereignty is defended by the entire system of the state. A major evolution in the Philippines' strategy is its decision to treat international law not just as a shield, but as an offensive instrument, a form of counter-pressure that forces China to justify its actions before the entire world.
The new government here in Manila is grappling with what might be called catastrophic success. What comes next is obviously going to be a delicate balancing act. It is a time for cool heads.
The 2016 arbitral ruling, once celebrated and then left underused, is now being wielded as a strategic weapon. Every new incident, every water cannon blast, every unlawful blockade becomes another example of Beijing violating a ruling that the global community already recognizes as legally binding.
Manila is no longer content with simply citing the decision. It is using it as a diplomatic lever that shapes narratives in foreign capitals and places China in the position of a repeat offender, unable to reconcile its claims with established international norms. At the same time, the Philippines is forging quiet but powerful coalitions with middle powers like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia, countries that share similar maritime concerns and whose own legal positions overlap with Manila's. By harmonizing maritime claims, supporting joint submissions to the UN, and presenting a united front rooted in UNCLOS, these states transform scattered voices into a coordinated legal chorus that challenges China's expansive assertions. This coalition building doesn't need a formal alliance. Its strength comes from the consistency of its legal logic, the legitimacy of its claims, and the shared interest in resisting revisionist territorial ambitions. The more Manila leans into lawfare, the more the burden shifts to Beijing. Every escalation must now be defended not against a single rival, but against the expectations of the international community. In this environment, China's coercive tactics generate diplomatic costs, damage its soft power, and narrow the space for ambiguity. Law, once treated merely as a courtroom victory, has become a battlefield of its own, and the Philippines, for the first time, is fighting on it with purpose and precision. The strength of the Philippines' new strategic blueprint becomes most visible when examined through real incidents, where each crisis reveals how Manila's doctrine now functions in practice. At 2nd Thomas Shoal, a ramming incident that could easily have spiraled into open confrontation instead showcased Manila's restraint and its mastery of gray zone crisis management. Rather than escalating, the Philippines documented the attack, filed coordinated diplomatic protests with allies, and ensured the footage reached international organizations, turning China's aggression into a self-inflicted reputational wound. Meanwhile, on land,
The uncovering of United Front infiltration attempts in local institutions demonstrated that the conflict is no longer limited to ships at sea. It is also cognitive warfare, attempts to influence narratives, pressure local leaders, and manipulate public sentiment. The government's response, involving cybersecurity agencies, transparency briefings, and rapid exposure of foreign-linked operations, revealed a new national reflex: defend the information space as fiercely as the maritime domain. These case studies illustrate a new strategic reality. China now faces multi-dimensional pushback every time it attempts coercion. Diplomatic isolation rises, legal exposure deepens, global media scrutiny intensifies, and allied coordination activates automatically. The Philippines, once portrayed as vulnerable and alone, has gained something that can't be bought: credibility. Its transparency, discipline, and alliance-centric strategy have earned it international sympathy and support, turning the power imbalance into a moral imbalance that Beijing cannot easily counter. The growing perception in foreign capitals is clear. The Philippines is no longer an easy target. It is resilient, interconnected, and strategically agile.
This leads to the larger conclusion. The Philippines is pioneering a new model of small state deterrence in the 21st century. Manila is proving that a country does not need to match a superpower's military tonnage to defend its sovereignty. It can leverage geography, alliance networks, information dominance, legal warfare, and societal cohesion to neutralize coercion in smarter, asymmetric ways. This is deterrence born not from superior firepower, but from superior strategy. In this new reality, China can still pressure the Philippines, but the Philippines can expose that pressure, resist it, counter it with allies, and rally global opinion against it. And that shift alone changes the balance of power. The Philippines is no longer playing China's game. It is rewriting the rules for how smaller democracies stand firm against authoritarian intimidation. If you liked the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.